helping American personnel understand who might be domestic terrorists. And one of the people that were listed on that qualifying list of potential domestic terrorists was recent returning veterans. I thought to myself, what's going on here? I spent all this time overseas in the military, training, deploying, because you wanted me to go fight the real bad guys, and now you're saying that if I'm a recent returning veteran, I might be a domestic terrorist. Suddenly, my Bill of Rights started to become much more important to me. I didn't want the government listening to everything I said because they didn't know me and they already put me on a list, right? That same year, Governor Jay Nixon in Missouri, there's a system in Missouri by which the state government helps inform law enforcement personnel of potential threats in our state. Well, they released a very similar list, only it just wasn't recent returning veterans. And they didn't call us domestic terrorists. They said possible potential militia-influenced extremists. And here's the people that were on that list. If you identify with somebody who passes around constitutional propaganda, if you identify with state sovereignty, well, that's part of the Constitution, right? Checks and balances between the federal government, the state government, the whole idea being that government's limited so people can stay free. If you're a homeschooler, that made the official list. If you ever supported a third-party candidate or Ron Paul or Bob Barr. So eventually, by the time I got to the end of it, I was a 5-star candidate to be a militia-influenced extremist, coming right out of the Marine Corps. It was the same year that I got my certificate of discharge. So this kind of put me on a little bit of a journey. I figured I took an ode to the Constitution, I might as well read it. So I went back and I started reading the Constitution, and you begin to understand why we have checks and balances. You begin to understand the value of it to help keep government limited, help keep people free. But one thing that I was missing out on, that I would argue today, the vast majority of Americans are missing out on, is what it means not just to have a constitution, but what it means to be free. People don't understand it the way they're supposed to understand it if they want to guard it and protect it. So I went back and I read the Declaration of Independence. In the first couple paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence, and this has become, I'm hearing more candidates start to recite this. And I think every candidate for office needs to be able to recite this. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The very first time America started formulating our laws for the Constitution, they were built, structured, and held together by those principles of what freedom is. There are young people today all across America, all across the world, are confusing freedom for free stuff. And it is sending us straight down the road to socialism and communism. I tell you what, the victims of communism, everybody, y'all have social media accounts?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like those social media pages that they have, and every time they put something out, share it, share it, share it. Because we're being inundated every day with the fist in the air, and people wanting to storm around, demanding their free stuff, demanding this, demanding that, shutting down streets, shutting down storefronts. This entitlement mentality, because they want freedom, they want free stuff, they don't understand the value of being free. And right now, today, America is in the middle of an identity crisis. And I mean that to the full extent of everything you can squeeze out of the word crisis. The whole idea behind having a group called the Real Republicans, I'm going to talk for just a minute about the identity crisis just within the Republican Party. Back in, I think it might have been 2012 or 2013, I'm going to tell a couple stories. 2012 and 2013, the state legislature was putting forth a tax credit program that would have cost the state about $400 million a year. And look, I'm not poor. just passing out free stuff to free people. We're seeing the effects of that today, right? We're having a problem getting laborers back into the labor force because why do they need to work if the government's just going to send them free money? But equally so, I'm also against corporate welfare because I don't think it's a good idea, and I don't believe our founding fathers think it's a good idea, and I don't think you can find any room anywhere inside the principles of liberty and freedom to justify the government subsidizing one business and squeezing everybody else out of the market because they don't qualify for those types of corporate welfare programs. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how this works. This ought to enrage everybody here. You people that want to start a business, personal freedom and economic freedom are the exact same things. I want to be very clear about that, and I hope everybody remembers that one. If you don't take anything else away from this talk, remember this. Personal freedom and economic freedom are the exact same thing. If you're not personally free, you're also not going to have your own freedom to go out and buy and sell things in the market, okay? So we have these things in Missouri called transferable tax credits. And people will come, lobbyists will come and they'll lobby on behalf of a business, so that way the legislature writes them a transferable tax credit of $1 million. Well, if they don't have $1 million tax liability, maybe they only have a $500,000 tax liability, well, they don't have to pay it because they have $1 million tax credit. But now they have a $500,000 tax credit that they haven't even used yet. So they can take it to a broker and sell it to somebody else who didn't qualify for the program. And that means that money goes directly into the pocket of the business that got that tax credit program written just for them. What do you think they do with that money? They write a lot of campaign checks, and they start lobbying for more and more tax credits, transferable tax credits, just for them. In 2012, we had one of these packages that was before us, and I was sitting on the Committee of Economic Development, and I was the only no vote on a bill designed to do that exact thing. And when I got an opportunity to speak, let me tell you something. When you have majorities or supermajorities in office, in power, in control of the legislature, they don't like it when even one person votes no. I voted no in that committee, and I kept asking questions of the witnesses that were coming forward. And the committee chairwoman made it very clear she was not happy with me constantly asking questions of these people that were coming forward to get this bill passed. Well, ultimately, we weren't able to pass the bill, and so the next year they came back, and instead of even going through the whole process, $400 million, and instead of going through the process of introducing a bill, debating the merits of the bill, getting it in committee, requiring votes to get it out of committee, what they did instead, they just offered it up on the House floor as an amendment to another bill. In that committee, I said, I'm just a good establishment Republican, and this is what our platform says about passing bills like this. I'm trying to turn it back around on them a little bit.
Yeah.
Today, I'm happy to say that we've come a long way from the types of Republicans that we used to have in Jefferson City, but we're not there yet. Is anybody familiar with what happened just this week on the floor of the Senate?
No.
We had 9, maybe 10 Missouri Republican state senators vote no on an amendment that would have prohibited Planned Parenthood from receiving taxpayer funds to stay in operation.
Who are they?
Oh, yeah. I will be posting their names are on social media. I will be posting them on my social media account so you can see them. Some of them are from this area.
Ellen Bannon was one.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'll make sure it's on ours.
So right now, we are in an identity crisis, not just as a Republican Party, but our whole country is in an identity crisis. And one of the things that they're using to keep people confused and keep people silent is the idea that if you don't agree, then you're on the fringe. You're hysterical. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're a bigot. You're a racist. One of the last of the 5 good emperors of Rome, his name is Marcus Aurelius. He wrote a book called Meditations. It was basically his own personal journal, and he wrote a lot of things in there. It was on the Marine Corps reading list, Marine Corps Commandant's reading list. I read it back in 2008. And there was one quote from Marcus Aurelius in there, and he says, anything worth being criticized for doing, let me rephrase this. He said, anything worth doing is worth being criticized for doing. So right now, with what is happening in this country, with what is happening in our state, we need more people that are willing to stand up and speak out and not back down than ever before in the history of our country. Because right now, everything is on the line. You want to take a firearm home with you? Guess what? That is on the line in America today. You want to be able to worship how you want to worship. You want to be able to believe and interpret the Bible the way you want to. That is on the line in America today. There is so much that's on the line. And if we lose it, there is nowhere else to go. We are in the fight of our lives for the survival and the security of our own freedom and liberty. So I would like to encourage everybody here, if you're on an email list, if you're part of this organization, get involved. But one more piece of advice is this, and this is where most people that go to meetings like this fail. Get in contact with your school board members. Get in contact with your state representative, with your state senator. Invite them out to coffee. Bring them to your house. Develop a relationship. The worst time to need friends in office is the day when you realize you really need friends in office. Start building those relationships today. And I will tell you, as a recovering politician, if I ever got a phone call from somebody in my district and they said, Paul, I've got about 7 or 8 people in my house. We're just going to meet and have coffee this weekend, but we got some questions about some things going on in Jefferson City. What are some things that we need to know that we'd like to learn a little bit more about? Would you come out to our house and just sit and talk with us for a few minutes? I'm telling you right now, they will go to your house and sit in your living room and drink coffee and talk politics with you. Do it. Because getting text messages on Facebook, getting form messages on email, those go away by hitting one button that reads delete. Build the relationships. Build relationships like your life and your liberty depend on it, because they do. We've got elections coming up, and there's so much work to be done in America. Whether or not we can take America back to the greatness of America, or whether or not we're holding on to everything we can hold on to right now, is still yet for history to play out. But we're the ones that are going to decide that. It's been an honor and privilege to be here with you. I really appreciate the time. Thanks, Dave. So, you're not leaving, you know.